A while back, I made a video where I beat Dark Souls 3 using only equipment from Dark Souls 2. I intended to try something similar in the other games eventually, but never got around to it, so eventually ended up being about 2 years later. But anyways, since it's been so long, let's explain the rules again. Starting with the obvious, I can only use equipment from the original Dark Souls. This includes weapons, armor, rings, spells, ammo, and consumables. Any consumables that are reskinned versions of their DS1 equivalent are allowed. For example, poison moss is essentially a purple moss clump, but green. And iron arrows are just large arrows from DS1 in a different quiver. For ammo, I'm not going to be that strict. As long as the arrows I'm using existed in some form in the original Dark Souls, I'll allow them. To give another example, I would be allowed to use magic arrows, since magic damage arrows did exist in DS1 in the form of moonlight arrows, but I would not be able to use lightning arrows because no such arrow existed in the first game. Key items required for game progression, or items that allow you to access other items, such as the King's Ring, Pharaoh's Lockstones, Fragrant Branches, Boss Souls, Bonfire Ascetics, and any items needed to trade with the birds for Dark Souls items, are allowed. Torches, however, are only allowed when absolutely necessary to unlock items or an area, and must be substituted with the Dark Souls equivalent, Cast Light, in other cases. As always, upgrade materials are allowed regardless of the game they originated in. This includes weapon upgrades and Estus upgrades. As for consumables, I'll make exceptions for soul items and human effigies. Since the humanity equivalent is slightly changed in every Dark Souls entry, I don't think it's a big deal to use them since this game also has a health loss mechanic with hollowing. I was more strict about this last time, but after getting some feedback from that run, I've lifted a few of the restrictions that may have been too ridiculous. For instance, I'm allowing infusions this time, even if the infusion system is different than DS1. However, I still may only use infusions that existed in DS1. For example, I may use a Faint Stone for a magic-infused weapon since magic infusions existed in DS1, but I may not use a Bleed Stone because bleed infusions did not exist. But for every dumb rule I take away, I must add a new one. There is one rule in particular that I added to make it more interesting. This only applies to weapons. I cannot use any weapons that originated in Demon Souls. I added this just to limit the weapon pool a bit because I think it's more fun this way. This means most basic weapons are going to be excluded, especially ones that have the same title as their weapon class. Weapons like the Scimitar, Claymore, and sadly, the iconic Moonlight Greatsword are Demon Souls weapons, so I won't be using them in this run. I'm not going over every Demon Souls weapon, but I made an exhaustive list of banned weapons, so you'll have to trust me if you're not familiar with Demon Souls. Other equipment that technically comes from Demon Souls is allowed. For example, even if the Tearstone rings from Dark Souls are spiritual successors to the Rat Rings of Demon Souls, in cases like these, I will prioritize the Dark Souls version and allow it to be used in this run. Most of the rings and armor sets from Dark Souls that have Demon Souls versions are different enough to not really matter, though it could be argued that they were only changed for licensing reasons, but let's not make the rules more complicated than they already are. As I typically do in my runs, I will be limited to one boss per weapon, meaning that after I defeat a boss, I must switch to a new weapon for the next one. Hopefully I didn't forget to mention anything, and with that, let's start the run. We'll start as a swordsman for the Wanderer set, but first we need to unequip our scimitar and short sword. Those are Demon Souls weapons, so we won't be needing those. Anastasia has been reborn in Drangleic. While this seems to have restored her legs, she doesn't have any arms, at least not until we make it to Malentia to buy some. Running past the enemies to make it to the second bonfire should be easy enough, provided you don't let yourself get slowed down by greed. I did manage to get a few soul items along the way though, at least enough to buy a hand axe. Oh, well that was stupid. Okay then, we'll need to get more souls now to get the Cestus, or as I like to say, the Kaistus, and from here we can challenge our first boss. We'll make sure to get the mansion key first for that other Estus shard. Upgrades aren't necessary for the last giant. The DPS of a plain Cestus is already very high in the early areas. I popped a green blossom before the fight to boost stamina recovery speed, so that works very well with this weapon. I'm the type of person who tends to hoard consumables and never use them, but this time, I can only use certain consumables, so why not use them when I come across them? This is a simple fight, so let's go back to Majula for some levels before we move on. First, I want to get Vigor, Endurance, and Vitality all to 10. And yes, I can level up stats that didn't exist in DS1, just so you know. We have the hand axe, so our weapon for the next boss of this area, the Pursuer, is already secured. Before we fight it, we still have other parts of the level to explore. We'll start by going through Pate's Trap so we can get the only staff allowed in this run, then come back around to the Ballista room to pick up Great Soul Arrow, and finally we go downstairs to activate the Pharaoh's contraption and get the Chloranthy ring from inside the chest. For now, we don't need anything over +3, so we'll save that large Titanite shard we got for later. In the Soldier's Rest area, once we get Dennis the Menace out of our way, there's another chest back here with the leather set. I'm going to challenge the Pursuer on the platform this time. I feel like it's easier to fight it here since we have more room to dodge, unless of course you use the Ballista method. One mistake I used to make was picking up the items before the Pursuer lands. If you do that, it'll wake all the other enemies up. It's not like these items are going anywhere, so there's no rush to pick them up. Apparently getting grabbed makes this fight easier. If the wiki is to be trusted, the boss variant of the Pursuer can only use the projectile attacks after landing a grab and cursing you. After lots of practice, I've learned that this is the easiest attack to dodge and punish. If you get behind him, you can keep attacking him since none of the projectiles should reach you. Somehow, I forgot to pick up the whip when I was here before. I'm all out of weapons and I need something for the Dragonrider. I don't need to do the cheese this time, we have enough weapons to fight it normally. I only have enough souls to level up once. Conveniently, all I need is one more dexterity point to use the whip. We'll upgrade it just once before we try it out on the Dragonrider. This version is very weak, so its slash resistance won't get in our way. While I don't intend to use the cheese, I always like to leave the floors down just in case he falls down on his own, but this was not working in my favor at all. This fight is already so easy, I really should just raise the floors and give myself some space to fight. Using a whip in particular makes the arena situation even more difficult. This weapon is designed to be used when there is a good bit of distance between you and your opponent, but we can't create the distance we need to truly be safe during his attacks. Staying at mid-range just makes us get clipped by the weird halberd hitbox, but this could also be a matter of dodging the wrong way. Either way, the clipping doesn't happen as much when we stay up close, but we also miss out on the uniqueness of the whip. But the moveset is still fun to use at close range. It can be a little hard to control, but that's part of the fun. Once we've done that, we'll do the same to Lycia. She's a cleric. She should be familiar with a little asceticism, right? I was over here trying to catch her on her way up and didn't even realize until I got the souls that she fell off on her own. There's nothing to feel guilty about. We have no use for her miracles in this run because the DS1 miracle tools, talismans, don't exist in Drangleic. I plan to put on some heavier armor eventually, so for now I'll keep increasing my vitality. Alright, let's go back out and get ourselves some new equipment. There's a good bit of DS1 equipment lying around in the form of shields and consumables, but for my next weapon, I'll be visiting Macduff to buy the scythe from his shop, which is practically identical to its Dark Souls counterpart. With only 10 strength, we can two-hand it. With this, we're ready to set off into the Shaded Woods. This isn't a random rooting choice, just a very complicated way of getting the craftsman's hammer without using a torch. If we keep progressing down this way, we'll reach the Confessor and be able to aggro Macduff without losing him as a blacksmith. Of course, that won't be for a little while because there are a couple bosses blocking the way. Once we've reached the less shaded part of the Shaded Woods, the first thing I want to do is jump across this ledge, then turn around and jump across the other ledge for the Black Knight halberd in the chest. That's basically all the loot we really need aside from some upgrade materials. It's a short area, so we can quickly upgrade our scythe and go straight to the area boss. Najka's not so bad once you get the hang of it. I used to have trouble with her spells, but that can be avoided if you stick to her legs and bait her to use melee attacks like the tail swipe. Her melee attacks can still be dangerous, but as long as you don't stay directly in front of her, you should avoid the nastier ones like the stinger grab. Like all halberds, the scythe benefits from sweet spot damage, so if you rely on hugging her sides like I'm doing, you'll be sacrificing a lot of damage for your safety from her spells, but I think it's a worthy trade-off. After this, I went to spend some souls on Molin's shop so he'd start selling the Elite Knight set, aka the poster set of Dark Souls. I won't make the same mistake as last time and forget to wear the poster set of the game I'm using equipment from. For Magus, we don't want to waste any of our good weapons, so this would be the time to use that leather shield we picked up earlier. I'll upgrade it as much as my Titanite will allow so I can squeeze as much damage as possible out of this thing. Even for this fight, it still won't amount to much. If it were just a single prowling Magus, the damage wouldn't be too bad, I guess, but that's kind of the whole gimmick of this fight. It's not just that particular type of enemy, it's a random assortment of enemies gathered for worship in this tiny room. None of them have much health, but the priest can cast a defense buff that makes them take significantly less damage, which they love to do as soon as I walk in, which means I can't rush them down at the start of the fight. I try to do what I always do and focus on the Magus first. Somehow his attacks are easier to dodge than the lightning spears from the priests. At a certain distance, I was getting clipped by it despite rolling to the side, and since I was running out of heals so quickly, I went to get the red tearstone ring so that I could at least get something out of it. Every now and then I would get a chance to rush down an unbuffed priest, but when I was forced to be aggressive so they wouldn't heal, I just got killed by the other two projectile spammers. The heal was even more annoying than the buff. Not only does it heal the priest who casts it, but also all the other enemies in the arena, and since they usually reapply their buff right afterwards, it's extremely frustrating to have to wait for the buff to run out again after losing all the progress you've already made. They seem to only do it when they reach 50% or less of their health. Based on my experience, if you get them just a little low on health, they shouldn't heal, but I can't make any promises. After getting more stamina and upgrading the shield a few more times, I felt refreshed and ready to give this fight another go. I start off with the Magus again, then gradually thin out the congregation while I wait for the priest to be vulnerable, as they are still my main threat. Even though they only have one attack, I do get hit by it, and it does a lot of damage, so I have to keep my eye on them. They usually cast one at a time in a specific pattern, so I can position myself behind one of them as I dodge the first one to be out of the way of the second one. The moment I see the aura fade, I run in like a wild animal to get rid of that priest. I have to kill him fast so he doesn't have time to heal. I'm too focused on that to care about getting caught by the other guy's lightning. Once we're at this point, the remaining priest cannot hit us. He has one attack, and if we stay behind him the whole time, there is nothing he can do about it. The crawlers aren't a threat either. It's very easy to space them out and kill them using jump attacks, which I am very grateful that they didn't forget to give to shields. Well, with the hardest fight so far out of the way, it's time for our master plan to get McDuff's booty off our booty. First, we've got to give him some of those flames he's always going on about. Then we hit him with the "it's just a prank, bro," while he's understandably trying to murder us, steal his things, then ask for forgiveness to void our prior actions so he can't press charges. With the craftsman's hammer, I'm no longer afraid of clearing out No Man's Wharf. This thing has crazy damage for being such an early weapon, and it gets counter damage. It's no wonder this one is a fan favorite. I had a lot of fun myself as I cleared through the level with ease. The only thing this weapon really struggled with here was the Darkstalker, since they have the range that this weapon lacks. So we're always at a disadvantage since we have to get right in their face to attack. It's probably a better idea to go for backstabs because they are very tanky and can interrupt our combos, whereas the other enemies would be dead before they even got a chance to. The one good thing I got out of almost dying was the RTSR buff. Although it was just a short walk away, it was still tense navigating through the last group of enemies before pulling the lever to call over the ship. Taking off my equipment in advance, I slowly made my way down to Gavlin, who I came here for in the first place. Naturally, I'll have lots of things to sell to him, since there's a limited pool of equipment and consumables I'm allowed to use. As expected, sweeping through an entire level will let us get quite a few levels with the Emerald Herald, and from there, we activate the Rotunda device and turn our attention towards yet another part of the map. Within the Huntsman's Copse, we will find a plethora of Dark Souls weapons scattered about the level. There's Ricard's rapier at the bottom of the initial cave, as well as a bandit's knife in the bandit-filled room, and finally, across the bridge, we'll find a notched whip left behind by one of the torturers. I think I'll go with this one next. Let's get it upgraded first, then we'll return to Hyde's Tower of Flame for the old Dragonslayer. I decided to give these enemies a break from being whipped, and instead let them return to the gentle embrace of the sea. That'll save us a lot of durability on the way to the boss. While I'm confident enough to use RTSR on the Guardian Dragon mini-boss, I don't think I'm ready to try it against the old Dragonslayer, as I haven't broken my habit of running straight into his spear yet. The Notched Whip did a good job here. The extra range is very helpful because we don't have to approach him to punish. He can be very quick to glide away after he attacks. And this weapon also has bleed buildup, which worked quickly against him. After we've beaten him, we'll claim his ring for later use, then get some extra dex and faith so we can use the BK halberd we picked up earlier. It's a special weapon, so I didn't bother upgrading it before fighting Freja. The Black Knight weapons in this game are very different than their Dark Souls versions by having innate fire damage, Freya's only elemental weakness. Although I can't use a torch to ward off the spiders, I could kill them very quickly with this weapon. Also, the Halberd's light moveset is really good at hitting short enemies since it sends the blade straight towards the ground. I did a lot better at hitting the sweet spot here than I did against Najka. I think it happens naturally in this fight because you have to position yourself carefully already so your weapon doesn't clank against her fangs. It could never hurt to start putting levels into ADP to prepare for the other three. For the Ruined Sentinels, we're using the wiki page approved method of taking our Craftsman's Hammer to +1 to take advantage of their extreme weakness to strike damage. The grass I ate outside the fog gate boosted my confidence a little. With my stamina regenerating so quickly, I could swing constantly and finish off the first Sentinel in just over 10 seconds. With the RTSR buff and counter damage on top of an already powerful weapon, the whole fight barely took longer than a minute. After this fight, we'll be switching to something much different as we head to the Huntsman's Copse to deal with the Skeleton Lords. I'll use my souls to get ADP to 20, and that should be all that we'll need for the rest of the playthrough. I learned my lesson earlier and chose the Bandit's Knife for this fight because I know what will happen if I try to challenge another group of enemies with a shield. Something the Bandit's Knife is good for is getting critical hits. Every enemy in this fight can be backstabbed and parried, so we should take advantage of that. Unfortunately, it's not like DS1 where you can just whip it out of the back pocket and one-shot everything you see in the early levels. Critical damage works differently in this game, so we'd have to put in a little more work with upgrades before we really see results. For some reason, Riposte did less damage than backstab, so trying to parry a single skeleton within the mob is definitely not worth it, especially considering that the other skeletons can still damage you during the animation. This boss eventually turned into a chipping war, wherein the sword-wielding skeletons have a clear advantage over my short-range dagger. It's probably for the best. I needed to go back out for upgrade materials for my knife anyway. This came with a moderate increase to critical damage, but still nothing game-breaking. I'd rather just stick with the light attacks. Our next weapon is Ricard's Rapier. At least that's what I'll be using to clear out the regular enemies in the Harvest Valley. We're going here next because we have some friends in this area like Chloanne, who sells upgrade materials, and of course Gavlin, who we can talk with to move him to his final location for easy item selling. A weapon as good as this one deserves to be saved for a more competent boss. So once we've gotten all the upgrade materials from the poison pools, we can return to Macduff to upgrade the small leather shield, this time to be used as a melee weapon. We might as well upgrade it to +9. These can be farmed anyway, so there's no need to be stingy with our Titanite chunks. I tried to go against the laws of nature and make this slow fight slightly less slow with RTSR, but was punished by the winds themselves for even thinking to do such a thing. You know, maybe we can take this as a lesson. Something about remembering when to take it slow. Not every encounter has to be action-packed. So let's continue with our slower pace and take a little time to look around and collect the loot in Earthen Peak. Gilligan's got a lot of stuff for us too. He sells a couple Dark Souls weapons, and even a Dark Souls armor set, one of my favorites, the black leather set. This one has decent poison resistance for its lightweight, so we'll equip it for Mytha. I'm not scared of her 50% resistance to lightning, so I'm going to buy some gold pine resin from Vengarl to buff it regardless. As I said before, torches are only allowed when absolutely necessary, and while it's very nice to be able to drain the poison by burning the windmill, we must remember that that is a luxury and not a necessity. Luckily, Ricard's Rapier has a very high attack speed, especially when using its multi-hit combo special attack. On top of this, we have the Old Leo Ring to boost counterattacks, which can melt through her health faster than the poison can heal it. One Dark Souls consumable we can't forget to use is the Divine Blessing, which can be OP when used at the right moment, and unlike the Dark Souls version, you can carry as much of these as you like. My strategy here was to stay close to her to prevent the magic attacks, and keep her from stalling so she couldn't get too much health back. I had more openings to heal than I thought I would, so it wasn't such a bad fight even with the poison floor. I'd say it was a welcome challenge and what would have been an even easier fight with this weapon. I dropped a few stones in the nest to try to get one of 2 Dark Souls weapons. That's one down. We'll try again for the other one when it comes up. However, I still need much more strength to even two-hand this weapon, so for now, we'll just use the reinforced club we bought earlier. Once that's been reinforced to an acceptable amount, we're going to the Sinner's Rise to take care of the next old one on our list, making a quick stop to unpetrify Strayed so we can trade with him later. Now on to the fight with the Lost Sinner. This fight was actually very easy this time around. I think the reinforced club always does pretty well for itself, even in DS2 where bleed is at its worst and its durability problem is amplified. In spite of that, it didn't break during this fight because it was doing so much damage to her it didn't have time to. But that was just round 1 of our fight against the Lost Sinner. We still need the Old Witch Soul from her to make one of our special weapons. After spending all of the souls from the fight to get more strength, we'll need to reinforce the reinforced club just a little more, and now it's time for round 2. How could I forget about how much fun this fight is in NG Plus after these pyromancers burned it into my mind in that New Game Plus items video I did so long ago? At least I've gotten some practice since then, and I noticed that the pyromancers don't actually do that much damage with their ranged spells. It's really only when you get up close and they try to blow you up that they become an issue. So as long as we stay focused on the Lost Sinner and keep an eye on the pyromancers, making sure to maintain our distance, we can almost pretend that they aren't here at all. After this, we will be able to get a ton of levels, which I've allocated into a few different stats. But most importantly, now we have enough strength to two-hand the Demon's Great Hammer, which we will upgrade as much as possible before we take it to the Iron Keep. This one's a special weapon, so the base damage is going to be high already. +3 was already enough to one-shot the many Elan Knights blocking our path. I had a good rhythm going here and decided to ruin it by rushing to the Smelter Demon Foggate. A rookie mistake, really. Every self-respecting Dark Souls 2 fan knows you can't fog wall in this game. I changed my mind about the Smelter Demon anyway. I figured it would be better to go straight to the Iron King himself. At least that way we'll unlock some new things in Cloanne's shop. The only thing I wanted from this level was the Zweihände, but I don't plan to use that one for a while, so we'll talk about that later. For now, we're sticking to the Great Hammer to pummel the old Iron King as we go down the list of old ones. This fight isn't very notable. With any striking weapon, this will be a very quick fight. However, I do appreciate that he drops a lot of souls for being such a simple boss, mechanics-wise. From here, we'll move on to a new weapon and free Ornifex so we can trade our boss souls with her. This reminded me to visit Straight again and check if he had anything new for us. He didn't. But I did end up buying Cast Light since I came all the way out here. Before I go down to kill the Rotten, I'm going to clear out a few of the optional bosses I missed in the earlier areas. The first one is the Flexile Sentry. Since I'm so over-leveled, we'll use a shield for this. Specifically, the wooden shield we bought from Gilligan. This one is funny to me because it's almost identical to the original one from Dark Souls, just with a lion replacing what used to be a dragon design. I'd like to think that Gilligan himself found the old shield from Dark Souls and tried to paint over the wear and tear so he could resell it as new, but misinterpreted the faded dragon design as a lion. Kinda like what happens when people mess up with art restoration. Getting the Pyromancy Flame after the fight reminds me that I do want to use spells in this run eventually, so my next levels will be going towards Intelligence. I still had a lot of souls left behind, with nothing better to do with them than pay for Gilligan's most expensive ladder to go all the way down the pit. Down here, I picked up the +1 version of the Ring of the Evil Eye. This is a good time to discuss something else that I need to specify in this run about Dark Souls rings and their DS2 exclusive upgraded versions. At first, I thought maybe I should ban the upgraded versions because they technically aren't in Dark Souls, but then I noticed that the stats themselves were inconsistent. So if I wanted to be that technical, I would have to pick whichever version of the ring was closest to its Dark Souls equivalent stats-wise, and that's just ridiculous. Besides, it's natural for the rings to be buffed or nerfed when transferred to different entries, so in the end, I ruled that all versions of Dark Souls rings are allowed, but I still tended to stick with the default versions of rings with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions. Either way, it's not worth splitting hairs over. After all, I promised to make the rules less ridiculous this time around. Let's go back to what we were doing. What that is, I don't know. I went down to the gutter for a second, then came right back out due to my usual indecisiveness, and soon found myself back in Iron Keep fighting the Smelter Demon with a pike. I can't believe I've been wasting all these years hoarding green blossoms and never using them. It feels like a whole new world has opened up for me. I don't know if it's the only reason Smelter Demon felt so easy this time, but it certainly helped. I said I would work on my intelligence, but what is intelligence without the slots to use your spells? We can't forget about attunement either. And now I suppose it's time to start exploring the gutter for real. Before I go, I'll buy the Lingering Dragon Crest ring just so our casts of light will go further. I'm not used to seeing this area under a harsher blue light. It's interesting how much the light source impacts the vibe of the area. It doesn't feel quite as calm without the warm torchlight guiding us. though I'm probably the only one who would possibly describe this area as calming in the first place. As we make our descent into the Black Gulch, we can finally switch our weapon after we get the forgotten key from the depths of the gutter, taking it back to the top to unlock the statue chamber, so we can break the pot that somehow manages to fit Havel's armor and shield in their entirety. At +2, this shield's damage is on par with a standard melee weapon, and when used in a slow-paced fight like the Rotten, there are hardly any downsides to using it. The only obvious downside is the heavy stamina consumption that comes with using a great shield for attacking, but we can mitigate that with our green blossoms. I hardly ever got my guard broken because of how good its stability is, and besides a couple of attacks, the Rotten can only inflict physical damage, which is completely negated by Havel's great shield. Overall, a very solid weapon against the Rotten. My only regret is that I couldn't do it in the full Havel getup. It would be smart to start leveling Vitality again so I can wear some more of his armor later. Ornifex has quite a few weapons for us in this run. Aside from the weapons we can get from trading boss souls, she also sells a few original Dark Souls weapons in her shop, namely the Composite Bow, the Partisan, and the Murakumo. When we've bought everything we need from her, we can also backtrack through the world to get some of the other weapons we missed. This mainly consists of the Black Knight weapons, but also some black fire bombs, which we'll buy in bulk from Magarold before we set off to fight the Royal Rat Authority. For the lower level optional bosses like this, I prefer to use consumables to balance things out a bit. The black fire bombs are very helpful for the smaller rat dogs in the beginning. If you're quick, you can kill a few of them before the Authority jumps down. This is the hardest part of the fight, mostly because of the lock-on screwing me over, but sometimes even if I miss one target, I hit another in the process, so it all works out in the end. The Authority itself doesn't take very long to kill with black fire bombs. All we need to do is back up a little while it's busy attacking, and we'll have time to throw several fire bombs before needing to dodge again. Once that fight's done, we can speak with the Rat King to join his covenant and unlock his shop to buy dung pies for the next rat boss. At first I thought I could get away with using dung pies for the minions too, but clearly that's not going to work out. If I can't even poison a single rat with what I have, I'm not going to poison 10 even if I had a full stack. We'll use black fire bombs again for the generic rats. They aren't connected to the boss's health pool anyway, so I don't see any problems with doing this. It took 4 dung pies for the toxin to kick in against the Vanguard, but I wasted a couple because I wasn't really paying attention. I didn't think it would matter that much, but of course with my luck it did indeed matter. 1 round of poison wasn't enough to finish the job apparently, and I didn't throw the rest of my dung pies fast enough to trigger it a second time. I had to come back after refreshing my stock of dung, this time being sure to throw with intent so that not a single pie goes to waste. Next, we've taken the Murakumo to +7 to prepare it for Drangleic Castle. Despite it doing slash damage, it's still a good weapon for dealing with the armored and stone enemies in this area. It has great range as well, and helps a lot with clearing out the swarm of soldiers you'll have to deal with at the start of the level. When we make it inside, I buy the Lucerne from Veliger, but not the Flamberge. The Flamberge is a Demon Souls weapon, and the Lucerne, well, that's a tough one. But I ultimately decided that the Dark Souls version overrides its Demon Souls counterpart. The Murden Hammer from Demon Souls is also a Lucerne, but I think the Lucerne in Dark Souls is different enough to be counted separately, most notably due to the change from blunt to thrust damage, which is part of what makes the Dark Souls version of the weapon so iconic with its potential for counter damage. But that's not important now because we're not even using that weapon yet. We still have a few bosses left to fight in the castle. I want to fight the Darklurker first, but got sick of getting killed by the NPCs in the Abyss, so we'll just stay on the main path a little longer until we reach the Dragonriders. There wasn't much to talk about with this fight, as per usual, but I did get a chance to use the Murakumo to its full potential. While my basic slashes were doing plenty of damage on their own, I didn't want to overlook the other parts of its moveset. One attack I really like is the one-handed heavy. It has good tracking to deal with enemies that are dodging away, but of course you could always realign it yourself with a directional input if you don't like locking on. From here, we'll start leveling Faith until we have enough to use the Dragonslayer Spear. We can upgrade it to +3, which should be fine, and then we'll go and give the Dark Chasm another shot. Having a spear makes these dungeons much easier to clear out. NPC-type enemies are very easy to play keep out with, and you can do other things like snipe them with the lightning or poke them off the ledges with minimal risk. To deal with the Darklurker, I've brought my repair powder so we can use its special attack without breaking it. During the first phase, I used standard attacks, and was still able to rack up a lot of damage in a short amount of time with how generous the counterattack windows are in this fight. Anytime he's swinging his dark sword will get counter damage, and I got lucky with my positioning here and fought him in a section that had just the right elevation to keep my head under his sword so I could keep attacking without needing to roll. Once phase 2 starts, I switched to the special attack to hopefully get some 2-in-1 hits with the clone. I don't have any buffs on for lightning damage, so I was pleasantly surprised to see how good the damage was on the special attack. And unlike the Dark Souls version of the spear, we can use the special attack two-handed. Overall, I definitely prefer Dark Souls 2's version of the Dragonslayer spear. Even with the bare minimum invested into Faith, we were able to get some good damage out of the lightning projectile, which makes the high durability cost worth it. After this, we'll focus on some of our other stats before we set out to finish the last of the optional bosses. Here we are in Macduff's shop again, this time to upgrade the composite bow for the Executioner's Chariot. I've also bought plenty of arrows for it, so we should be good to go for the boss, even if we have to spend some on the skeletons and other enemies leading up to the fight. It did get hectic in here trying to deal with the skeletons with my bow. I just roll spammed until the chariot got there to knock them down. I do have some poise since I have Havel's leggings, but it wasn't enough to save me from all their wobbling. After killing the necromancer, I stole her little corner and turned it into my sniping spot for the rest of the fight. It's not a very eventful way to fight it. I usually don't use this strategy unless I really don't feel like fighting the chariot, but this time I did it just because I can. In Dark Souls 2, the composite bow isn't held back as much by its low range, and we can shoot the chariot from afar to finish off the fight without needing to engage with the second pack of skeletons. We'll buy the Great Scythe and a couple of pyromancies off of Titchy Grin, then make our way to the next optional area, the Belfry Luna, taking our +6 partisan with us. There's not a whole lot going on in here offline, but we can get the blue Tearstone ring, I guess. Not that I really plan to use it. But you know, maybe it wouldn't have been such a bad idea if I'm struggling to survive against NPC invaders. Our partisan is much more useful in the wide open space of the rooftops. We can poke at the gargoyles without having to worry about our attacks getting deflected off the walls or whatever was happening with that bellkeeper earlier. The partisan has something unique going for it as far as spears go. In addition to the typical thrusting attacks, it has a sweeping attack too. This does a lot of damage on its own, but can be comboed into a thrust to fish for that counter damage. I used RTSR opportunistically in this fight. If they hit me into range and I saw a window to attack, I would. But I did have some close calls, so I decided not to stay low on health for too long. Once we're done with the fight and can access the loot below the tower, we'll take advantage of the partisan's sweeping attack to clear out all the dogs, and once everything down here has been defeated, we can pick up a dragon tooth. And that's all for the optional bosses. It's time now to prepare another weapon as we return to the castle. I'll be using that great scythe I bought earlier and taking it to +6. This is going to give us a fun little challenge on the Looking Glass Knight. We have to mind our spacing as we simultaneously try to hit the sweet spot and avoid hitting the mirror. This is another fight where I got hit into RTSR range and rolled with it. I was also expecting him to summon soon, so I knew I would have time to heal, but I wanted to get the extra damage while I could. The summon wasn't a problem this time. I pretty much ignored him the whole time and was just fine. The perks of wearing pieces of Velstadt. Looking Glass Knight was pretty fun with the Scythe and RTSR combo, so when we're done with that, we'll work on our intelligence and faith some more. As it turns out, I never picked up the weapon I want to use for the Demon of Song. Apparently I missed one of the hidden walls in the ruined Sentinel room, and the one I missed is the one with the target shield inside. Once that's good and upgraded, we can pick up where we left off at the Shrine of Amana. So I chose this because I was only thinking in terms of the boss, but the moment I entered this place, I witnessed the consequences of my decision. I guess there's no rule that says I can't equip a different weapon for going through the area, but I'm very stubborn. Now that I've declared this the next weapon, it's ride or die. If it can't do its job to protect me from the enemies, I'll just take my chances and sprint past them. If it doesn't have enough pushback to send the enemies into the water, well, then I suppose I'll have to lead them down myself. Surprisingly, I didn't struggle at all with getting to the third bonfire. I think the 2 pieces of Velstadt I wore were the unsung heroes of this journey. It didn't stop me from getting 2-shotted by the Demon of Song, but that was my bad anyway. There's not really a reason to rush a fight with a target shield. It's going to be a slow fight whether I like it or not. So after I came back, I took things slow, and of course, that plan went much better for me. We won't waste any time in descending into the undead crypt. I actually have the lucerne prepared already, so we can switch to that to clear out the area. As we progress through the crypt, we'll be able to pick up the chunks we need to upgrade it, so by the time we open the shortcut and are ready for Velstadt, we have a +7 lucerne. Because we'll have to rely on the sweet spot mechanic for maximum damage, I've buffed it with gold pine resin to make this fight more forgiving. While it would be amazing if we could stack sweet spot damage with the old Leo ring, sadly, the lucerne isn't quite as good in this game as it was in the first Dark Souls. The reason being that the damage is not pure thrust in this game, but a mix of slash and thrust. So using the Leo ring is hardly worth it, since the majority of the moveset counts as slash damage. From the testing I did on regular enemies, I think the wiki was actually right about something for once, and that is that only the shield poke moveset counts as thrust. I tested it with and without the ring and found that the extra damage was about 12.5% higher, which is the exact amount that the ring boosts counter damage. But that doesn't matter at all because I exclusively used the two-handed moveset for Velstadt. Despite everything, this was a fun fight, with the added challenge of using spacing and aiming for the sweet spot, which is the same thing I said earlier about the Looking Glass Knight. Maybe I do have a sweet spot for this mechanic after all. We can level up a few times after the fight. For now I'm focusing on intelligence and faith, but I may as well get another level for strength. After a brief fight in Seldora, I can buy Pate's armor from Malintia, aka the hard leather set in Dark Souls. I missed a few items in the poison pools, one of them being the washing pole from Dark Souls, which I'd like to bring along to Aldia's keep. Durability is particularly brutal for katanas in this game, so I want to use it in a shorter area like this. This time it's even shorter than usual because I have no reason to light the sconces for the secret room. After the entrance area, we don't need to kill any of the enemies in the hall. We can sprint past them and save all our durability for the Guardian Dragon. Thankfully, this is a weak boss with low physical defenses and not much health, but I still wouldn't recommend using a katana against any boss in this game without repair powder in your hotbar. Before moving on to the next level, we first return to Majula to claim some levels as per usual. We need to go back to Brightstone Cove to farm the falconer closest to the bonfire until he drops a sunlight medal. This is just a demonstration. Obviously, I'm not farming all 20 medals ever again now that I have Cheat Engine, so we'll spawn them in and save a few hours in the process. After offering all of those to the statue, we get the Sun Sword as a reward, aka the Sunlight Straight Sword we all know and love from the first game. Dragon Eyrie is full of upgrade materials, so I don't see why we wouldn't go ahead and max it out with how easy Titanite slabs are to get in this game. Here, we can get some of the coolest fashion in the game, which is still true even in the sequel where it has much more competition. After we've passed the test, we may proceed down the path of the dragon, where we must decide if we are to keep walking the path before us, or defeat the so-called ancient dragon and make our own path. Though it may not be the easiest path, the choice is obvious. Anastasia must not leave behind any loose ends if she is to shed her curse and begin anew. The Sun Sword has a wide variety of attacks to choose from to help in a fight like this. Since I've gotten better at dodging the fire over time, I prefer to fight it from the front since the stomp tends to be an insta-kill move for most builds. The Sun Sword has a lot of potential in this fight. Both the one-hand and two-hand movesets have thrusting options, which could be useful for reaching the head. I still found it to be too annoying trying to catch it, so I went for the front toes for more consistent damage. It does have a few bite attacks with its head, but they seem to be fairly rare. Usually it would just jump back and proceed to spam the fire breath no matter where I was. The best way to dodge the fire breath depends on your position relative to the dragon's. I would say that if you're hitting the legs, either the back or front legs, use the tail following strategy. But if it flies up when you're attacking its head, run as far away from it as you can until the dragon is a good distance behind you. But be careful. If you're too indecisive and don't run fast enough, you will get caught in it no matter what. I did die to this a few times, but thankfully my weapon wasn't that bad. I'm actually well prepared for a weapon like this since it is a quality weapon. Getting my levels evenly always works out. I can't forget to mention the gold pine resin as well. While not as effective as it is against true dragons, it was still a big help for this fight. We are once again distributing our levels evenly, only this time, we'll try to get our magic all caught up with the other stats. While we work on that, we'll swap back to melee weapons for the remaining base game bosses. I have just enough Twinkling Titanite on me to get one more special weapon to +4. I have chosen to use the Black Knight Ultra Greatsword to clear out the giant memories. There's not a whole lot for me to do here aside from getting the giant souls, but we do have the steel set in case we want some variety with our heavy armor. Once we've collected everything we need, we just have to defeat the Giant Lord to claim the final soul of a giant. Big weapons are always fun to use against him. It's super satisfying to see his health come off in chunks. I also love the explosiveness that fire weapons have in this game, especially with an ultra greatsword like this one. You can just feel the impact of every hit. The rewards are great for a fight as simple as this one. We can get 4 more levels from the souls dropped from the fight, and use the boss soul to buy out Cloanne's petrified dragon bones. Now that our Chaos Blade is nearly max level, and all 5 giant souls have been collected, we can turn our attention towards Vendrick. Anastasia desperately clinging to Aldia's words, as one who also seeks answers. The Chaos Blade cuts deep into his exposed skin, but sadly won't bleed him out as it does in the other games. That hardly matters with how much physical damage it does in just a couple slashes. If I didn't have to worry about dodging and could use all my stamina to attack him, that number would be even higher, somewhere around 1,000 damage for 3 or 4 slashes. I got good RNG with him and managed to keep him away from the corners, so I can stay in the blind spot behind his left leg. Eventually, I got myself into RTSR range just from using the sword without needing to heal. I was hoping that I could kill him in a single health bar, but I couldn't take the risk with how well things were going. The cursed king falls by the cursed sword, a fitting fate for an undead. As we prepare to approach the throne, we put some points into attunement, then we head back to the things betwixt to trade for the other Dark Souls weapon in their inventory, the Channeler's Trident. You could never get this kind of luck in the first game. Anyways, as I checked off the list of weapons I made, I noticed that I would need to fight the Old Iron King again to access one of them, so we'll do that, get the Old King's soul, and make the Dragonslayer Greatbow with Ornifex. With all these new weapons to choose from, I settled with one of the Black Knight weapons I already had for the Throne Duo, the Greatsword. This one is very different from its Dark Souls version. Fire damage aside, the moveset has been changed as well. I don't mind that though. Even though the Dark Souls version of the weapon is stronger, I think this one has a really fun moveset. I was using the two-handed moveset for this particular fight, and while this moveset isn't unique to this weapon, I think it's a fitting choice. Going into stance after each swing evokes the knightly confidence that the proud knights of Gwyn once had. Though the Black Knight weapons have lost their original purpose, with no demons of chaos to slaughter in Drangleic, they have been born anew from the flames, and granted a new purpose. Anastasia is no different. Her link to the fire has been severed, and she too questions her purpose in this strange land. And so, without hesitation, she challenges Nashandra. But she was so eager to get to the throne that she forgot to upgrade her trident. Dying gives us an excuse to go back and upgrade it, but Nashandra can be a pushover if you're too strong. So I'd rather take the challenge and leave it as it is. We have some help from the old Leo ring, and we have the special attack that will buff us for a brief time, emphasis on brief. There was a time when I could look at this stance and laugh, but now I've been permanently damaged from the one-shot challenge. The only problem with the buff is how much durability it uses, so we can only use it a couple times before breaking the trident. I did bring some repair powder, but remember, switching to your second trident is always faster than repairing. With that done, we can now buy infinite Titanite chunks from Cloanne, which is important for going into the DLC. We could fight Aldia now, but I'd rather save him for last. That way, we can take a little break to get some levels before we explore the DLC areas. Unfortunately, our next weapon, the Monastery Scimitar, will require an indefinite amount of farming. I say indefinite because it is a rare drop from a non-respawning enemy in Aldia's Keep that only spawns at bonfire intensity 2 and above. Since the drop is RNG based and I have to kill the Guardian Dragon every time I don't get the weapon, and I've done the farm legit in another run, I am going to spawn the sword in if it takes more than a couple tries because I know how ridiculous this can get. In addition to the weapon, individual pieces of the monastery set can drop from this phantom as well. This is another personal favorite of mine. It's a shame how obscure it is in this game. A few rounds of trying for the scimitar gets us quite a few levels. We have enough to level several stats, but the one with the most immediate benefit is Dex, since this weapon has such good scaling. Now we can go to Sholva and see how it fares against the enemies of the Sanctum. While it's lost some of its original moveset, we can still access the sword dance if we use it in one hand. This move is definitely spammable against certain types of enemies, but I'd be wary of using it too much against the Sanctum Knights. They have the poise to tank this and a two-handed heavy attack, and tend to respond with their own combos if you get too greedy. But when we do manage to clear out this room, we're rewarded with our first piece of the Katarina set so far, the iconic Onion Helm. Obviously I can't pass this up, so we're going to wear it as we go through the rest of the dungeon. I think our scimitar needs one final touch before challenging Alana. I haven't been investing in intelligence for nothing, so let's take advantage of her weakness to magic with Crystal Magic Weapon. After using the soul items we have stocked up, we now meet the 28-point requirement to attune the spell. We only get one use with our amount of attunement though, so we have to use it wisely. With Alana, it's probably better to go the maximum DPS route. As much as I love the graceful combos of the one-handed strong attack, the damage is easily outclassed by simple two-hand light attack combos. I was getting good RNG for once. She was already down to half health and had only summoned Skeleton so far, so of course I squandered this trying to do who knows what by mashing into her combos. But Lady Luck was merciful today. I got one more chance to kill her without any Velstadts, this time not taking the good luck for granted. The sword dance makes for a nice finisher, and from here, we can start preparing for Sin. For this, I want something with big damage, like the Zweihänder. It could be argued that the Zweihänder originated in Demon Souls because of how similar it is to what was called the Greatsword in that game. But in this game, it's actually called a Zweihänder, and in that game it isn't, so I'll allow it. I seem to be in a magic mood today. First buffs, now infusions. I have to be able to say that I used infusions at least once in this run. I don't want to have lifted the ban on infusions for nothing. A giant sword is a logical choice against a dragon, and for Sin in particular, I don't mind the heavy weapons as much, because the durability is easier to keep track of when the combos are shorter. Even the Zweihänder breaks easily in this game, even if it doesn't seem like it would. After just a few swings, it already needs to be repaired. I continue to be my own biggest obstacle in this fight because I still can't help but to attack into him every time he does something. But surely if I do it enough times, it has to work at least one of those times, right? Well, I guess it's time for everyone's favorite gank squad. I've brought the Dragon Tooth to this fight because it specializes in pancaking player-type enemies. The heavy damage is also helpful in general when you've got 3 things to deal with at once. Like anything else, it obviously has its weaknesses too, which are unfortunately showcased just as prominently in this fight. Big weapons have a mind of their own when locked on in this game and will go in the direction they feel like going. I almost wish I hadn't survived this. At least it would have been less depressing than the fumble it led to. I was too scared of being punished to heal and froze up for no reason until I decided it would be a better idea to throw out a random R1, which of course her katana easily countered. But now we know exactly what to do when it's our turn to bully our fellow Dragontooth warrior. Now that we're finally free from the Cave of the Dead, we get to switch weapons and move on to Broom Tower. My weapon of choice for this area is the Butcher's Knife, a very chipped version of the one Mildred uses in the first game. Even though the Rotten clearly did not take very good care of this thing, the knife still retains its life-stealing effect, which is a big reason I chose it for this area. There's a lot of rooms where the enemies are very densely packed together. We may lose a lot of health to them, but at the same time, attacking into them lets us get a lot of it back, so it's a good trade. The last thing I want to do before we fight the first boss is find the other pieces of the Katarina set hiding in here. I couldn't remember which wall it was behind, so I just blew them all up. One of them has 8 petrified dragon bones, which is actually very helpful since I still needed a couple for the Butcher's Knife to be +5. Now that we've gotten everything we needed from this area, let's head down to the bottom of the tower to challenge the Fume Knight. The Butcher's Knife isn't a bad option here. The damage is high, and the lifesteal mechanic will be very helpful as the fight progresses. Being an axe, its range isn't the best thing in the world, but whiffing isn't as punishing as it was in the first game. Thank God we don't stumble anymore, because that would be really rough with his frame-perfect dodges. He will punish us for healing, of course, but we can exploit that behavior for a big punish window. This was a fun fight to do with the Butcher's Knife. I can see why Mildred enjoyed her line of work so much. You can't help but play with your food a little when you use this. With the Fume Knight's help, We should have plenty of souls to upgrade our Pyromancy Flame and get some spells to use against the next boss. We're using Pyromancy because this Smelter Demon is blue to let you know that it does magic damage instead of fire this time. Along with the standard fire-based Pyromancies, I'll be using both Poison and Toxic Mist since it can be poisoned. I'm not going to be too strict about whether or not these should count as Demon Soul spells, because Pyromancy as a discipline was not a thing in that game. So if you really wanted to, you could argue that the Firestorm Pyromancy is from Dark Souls, and I technically couldn't say you were wrong. But enough about Demon Souls, we're here to fight the blue Smelter Demon. From how it's going so far, I don't think the fight itself will be very hard. But it'll suck if I have to do it again, because it sure as hell isn't easy getting here without a melee weapon. I need to manage my spells well, because I don't have the herbs to bail me out if I cast too carelessly. It only takes one cast each of Poison and Toxic Mist to poison it, but it has to stay in the cloud long enough, otherwise it won't work. I decided to use my fire spells first while it's easier to damage it, and save the poisoning for the second phase when it buffs itself. Despite everything, I still didn't manage to kill it with Pyromancy alone and had to use the Pyromancy Flame as a weapon. I'm getting deja vu from this. That leaves us with one more boss in the Broom Tower, Sir Alon. For him, I'm going to pick up the Avalon from the Undead Crypt, which is hidden in this room right here behind an illusory wall which, I'll be honest, I completely forgot existed until I checked the wiki again. When we have it, we can use whatever we have left to buy some lightning bolts. 300 of them will do. It's very tempting to try RTSR here, but I feel like it's not really worth it with how nerfed the damage boost is, especially with how difficult it is to time a shot and not get killed during the reload animation. If we hit all 3 of our bolts, our damage will still be okay even without RTSR, but we need to be patient and accept the fact that it could be a bit of a longer fight than usual. I expected this to be a lot worse than it actually was. The key is to keep circling behind him to prevent him from immediately doing a follow-up. I got hit a lot while reloading, but had enough healing items to outlast him regardless. Before we go to the final DLC, we're backtracking a bit to get some weapons we missed earlier. I forgot to pick up one of the Black Knight weapons when I was in Iron Keep, so I have to get that. And I was reminded of something else I had forgotten about when I was using the Avalon, which is the Hawk Ring. We really don't want to forget about that, considering that the next weapon I plan to use is the Hunter's Blackbow. We're going to go through Frozen Aleum Lois as an archer who primarily uses fire arrows. It seems fitting to pit fire against ice. As an archer, we never want to get too close to our enemies if we can help it. We advance slowly and let them approach us 1 or 2 at a time. Usually what I would do is establish a safe area to retreat to when things got overwhelming. If I was far away enough, many of the enemies would stop pursuing, and I could aggro them again as I pleased. When I diverged from this strategy and got too cocky with my archery, I was humbled very quickly. Using bows against Ava actually gives us an advantage, because we don't have to worry about our weapon taking extra damage. I also find it easier in general to fight her with a ranged weapon because it negates the whole running away problem. Somehow she still found ways to evade my arrows at point blank, but everything ended up fine in the end because she once again couldn't help herself from running away from me when she could have finished the job then and there. As we backtrack through the town, we can kill this thawed-out mimic for the final piece of the Katarina set. And as you can see, I've already switched to the Black Knight Great Axe for the remaining portion of the level. For now, we're just doing some preparation for the Ivory King by getting all the Lois Knights. We'll fight him in a little bit. I actually want to do the Frigid Outskirts first. As I've established, I can use the torch to open this door because it's the only way to access a key item. As much as I wish I had an excuse to ignore this place. But this armor's not just for show. We have to play the part of the brave Katarina Knight if we are to be worthy of wearing it. Even if we must face the most terrifying beasts amidst the blinding blizzard. Just so we're on the same page, I'm referring to the reindeer, not the king's pets. I brought a fire weapon hoping it would make my life a little easier, but forgot that the durability gets completely drained in about 5 hits, which is really annoying because I have to spend my openings using repair powder instead of punishing. The more I think about it, the more mean-spirited the healing part feels. Was this really necessary? But now that it's over with, I can finally realize the plan I've had for the Ivory King since the start of the run. That's right, we're going to get the majestic greatsword for an epic battle between left-handed swordsmen. I know there's no rule that says I can't use the standard right-handed moveset, but the left-handed moveset is so much cooler and much more reminiscent of Artorias. so I always gravitate towards it when I use this weapon. It also gets a unique moveset when two-handed from the left side, which I of course forgot to do. But the left-handed strong attack is still great. It staggers enemies quickly, and does a lot of damage to the Ivory King and his knights. Me and my friend here were able to get to the king without any problems. I guess I really lucked out this time because this particular knight had hardly taken any damage up to this point. That, and the fact that the Ivory King was only aggressing me, contributed to the knight lasting an unusually long time, nearly to the end of the fight. When the knight died, it made me look bad in comparison because I was barely holding my own when left to my own devices. With the rulers of all the Lost Kingdoms slain, it's time to finally face Aldia and make our decision as he wants us to do. This is off topic, but I've put on a few pieces of the Dark set to make a cool Dark Lord looking outfit. I got most of those off camera. Anyways, I checked my list and it looks like I have 2 more weapons left that I can use, so I decided to use them both. We have the Sorcerer's Staff and the Dragonslayer Greatbow, but our extra range isn't going to make much of a difference in this fight since he buffs himself the whole time. As always, it's not an eventful fight, but not too much of a hassle to get done. And with this, it's time for Anastasia to make her choice. Disenchanted with the Firelink prophecy after her abrupt reawakening in Drangleic, she has chosen to walk the unknown path, for she once had no legs at all and hadn't the luxury of agency. She sets out seeking a new purpose after being stripped of her old one. Perhaps she will find the true nature of the essence, which still eats away at her soul, or perhaps she will find, as Aldia puts it, something else entirely. Thank you all for watching this video. I appreciate that you watched all the way to the end, and I hope you enjoyed yet another themed playthrough of Dark Souls 2. If you liked this video, feel free to suggest an idea for the next one, or you can check out the videos I already made about the Souls series. This will be the final video of 2025, and I must say, it was a fun year for making videos, and here's to many more years of Dark Souls challenge running.